Bizarre Reality Media. The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep conversational exploration into the fringes of social norms. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, I'm joined by Tex for now his fourth return, as we embark into the world of cryptozoology, a field where myth meets potential reality. We'll be discussing everything from the thrilling tales of sightings of legendary pterodactyls to the fascinating way these accounts challenge the very fabric of conventional science. It's a journey into the shadows of the unknown, and we're ready to unravel it all for you guys. But before we get into this fascinating conversation, just a couple of quick news and updates. First and foremost, for anybody that noticed that we didn't have an episode of Bizarre Inquiries last week, that was due to some technical issues on my side. Ended up having some issues around the house and unfortunately was not able to get to the show, but we will be, of course, hitting that next month. So if anybody would like to catch the December episode of Bizarre Inquiries, that'll be happening on December 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over there in the usual place, the Bizarre Reality Media YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble channels. And if anybody has any questions, clips, articles, or anything they would like to submit for that one, just make sure you get it to us before then. But moving on, if anybody is still interested in winning a free t-shirt of their choice off of the Bizarre Reality Media merch store, all you guys have to do is fill out a quick 8-question survey, all your guys' thoughts and opinions relating to the show. And once that number reaches 50, I will do a random number generator, and the winner, of course, will get any t-shirt of their choice off of the merch store. And if you guys might be interested in doing that, that link is available down in the show description. And if anyone is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing their experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys could always call or text me on the Bizarre Reality Media hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551, and you guys can call or text that 24/7, 7 days a week, anytime you guys happen to want to try to get a hold of me. And if you guys are interested in supporting the show and all the hard work behind it, there are a couple of awesome ways that you can do so. First and foremost, you guys can go and check out the Patreon, which I would definitely appreciate. 2 tiers available over there with ad-free/early access and full access, and there might be some more changes coming soon over there because, of course, you got to trial and error stuff and see what people like. And the next way you guys can support the show is by going and checking out the Bizarre Reality Media merch store with t-shirts just $15.68 plus shipping, which equals out to about $20. So about average for a t-shirt. And again, I would definitely appreciate it because you're supporting the little guy, and you guys can wear the logo, grassroots support, and make it so people can see it, read it, check out the show, all that good stuff. And you guys could also donate to the show directly. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, wherever you guys happen to use. Always appreciated. Hopefully get me a coffee or an energy drink or something like that to keep me up through the night. But anything you guys are willing to contribute to the show to give back the value that you guys receive from the show, I would greatly, greatly appreciate. And the last way you guys can support the show is by going and checking out the affiliate links with some awesome additional discounts available for you guys down there from Sticker Mule and from Dimension Devices. And I know times are tough out there, but if you guys would like to support the show in some other ways, you guys could always be awesome enough to leave a review or rating for the show on any podcatcher you happen to use. And if you guys don't mind leaving a 5-star, of course, I will read it on the show and give you guys a big shout out. But if you guys don't mind doing that anyways, it'll help to push up the show in the algorithms, make it so that more people are able to see the show. And in turn, with more people seeing the show, I'll be able to continue getting on awesome guests for you guys. So it goes full circle, and it is always appreciated. And you guys can also go and follow the show on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. You guys could share the show directly, word of mouth, with anybody that you think might be interested in checking it out. You guys can also go and check out live shows and video content on the Bizarre Reality Media YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble channels. And last but not least, you guys can always go and check out my other show, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin. get you guys hopefully another show to listen to get you guys through the work week. If you guys enjoy the content over here, I definitely think you guys will enjoy the content over on that show. A lot of the same stuff, but it's our deep dives over there. Of course, some guests thrown in the middle, but a lot of it's our research, so I think you guys will definitely enjoy it. But every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show for his now, I believe, 4th or 5th appearance, but always under a different podcast. Please welcome back to the show, Tex. How's it going today, man?
Doing great. Thank you for having me back on. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure to have you on, man. And like I said, as we're starting back up, every single time you've come on, you've been under a different podcast name because, you originally came on the very first time talking about being a 20 and back survivor. And then you've always been talking about this really, really fringe content, man. So again, every single time I talk to you, you got a totally different alias and totally different show name. The only thing that's remained the same is Tex.
The shadow banning is real. The shadow banning is definitely real. And, if you speak truth to power, really, they're just going to turn off the mic. That's what they do. They just turn off your mic and then they deplatform you because they own the court, basically. They can take their ball and go home. Now, the show I'm running now is Advanced Cryptozoology Exploration Society. That show, in connection with my other projects and everything, that show is strictly cryptozoology. It is strictly paranormal investigation in a prosaic way, in a real serious way that takes into account natural philosophy, takes into account real science and discoveries in the fields of paleontology, biology, zoology, etc. And it also deals in, a more, I guess you would call it comprehensive, contextualized support of cryptozoology. I'm not skeptical. I don't approach subjects that I wouldn't feel are real. And when I am approaching subjects, I try to see them through the lens of the eyewitness, or see them through the eyes of the eyewitness, and see them as they saw them, not try to create narratives, not try to, add skepticism, but just try to literally put myself in these people's shoes, the eyewitnesses' shoes, and to live these moments of seeing these creatures, because ultimately, as a citizen scientist, that is where discovery comes from. This is where reality really is. It's real people. It's real folks in the real world. They make contact with things because they're out there. That's how it happened. That's how the chips fell, and we have to respect this as the process for discovery. Many times, for example, a lot of people are willing to discount any and all eyewitness testimony, as well as the physical evidence, but just to keep it on the eyewitness testimony, as not physical evidence, not forensic evidence. So it's worthless. But we all know that in the court of law, the real life, the real world, if, say, for example, as many people who saw Bigfoot had seen someone commit a crime, and as many pieces of forensic evidence, no matter how circumstantial they may be, were connected to this event, you would be going to jail. This would be an immediately guilty verdict. Because that's like this. We live in this 2 + 2 = 5 world, especially when it comes to science, that I don't like to ascribe to. I try to keep it in that real world common sense thing that this is the way I approach it. Is we come to the terms of what's going on without dismissing or just trashing or anything like that. Certain accounts for it.
Say, I know you're a hunter, and I know you spent all this time in the woods, but you definitely didn't see a Sasquatch. You saw a bear. Your eyewitness account means absolutely nothing, even though you know exactly what you're talking about out there.
It's stuff like that, and it's stuff like the photographic and video evidence that gets dismissed because for some reason somebody declared photographs and video to not be enough evidence to actually, prove an animal exists. I don't know when exactly that is, but I have my own theories about like the Royal Academy of Sciences and the academic structure as a whole as it is.
AI is super fucked that up now too. That's made that like even worse now where you can't trust anything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, not even. Well, I'm saying like not even that. Like the idea of an animal has to be killed and a corpse has to be recovered most of the time because there are academic experts and zoologists, ocean, marine biology, etc., that have only seen animals, but because they are professors, they have degrees, etc., these animals are real. But there are people who have seen, say, Bigfoot thousands and thousands of times, individually, let alone the thousands and thousands of people who see it every single year. I think it's up between like 6,000 or 60,000 sightings a year. And yet there is no serious discussion as to whether or not, real studies need to take place, real surveys need to take place, real attention needs to be spent. And let's just say every city or every state that has a Sasquatch sighting has universities that have science departments, they have biology departments, they have zoology departments, they have wildlife experts, they have people professors, hominologists, people who can, primatologists, people who could be sent to these areas to do real serious field work. They don't even consider it a possibility. They consider it a myth or consider it a legend, which is as divorced from reality and as elitist and as, like on a pedestal as you could possibly get. And because I don't come from that area and because I don't belong to those people, I have nothing to lose from actually treating this like a real citizen scientist, like a real field of study. And that's why I think cryptozoology is going to be vindicated. It's because real people are actually doing real work in these fields. Like we're doing more work in these fields than actual zoologists are doing in the study of currently existing creatures.
See, I don't think people take in the additional context when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Like, when it comes to history, of course, everybody kind of has the idea of why history might possibly be changed or why certain things might be covered up. I mean, all it takes is you start diving into any of the Egypt stuff and you see how weird any of it is and how they won't let certain people check out this area, but they can check out this area. Like, it starts getting to a point where you realize that a lot of this stuff is intended to push some form of a narrative. And it's no different with cryptozoology. A lot of this stuff, they don't want to put any effort into actually figuring out or discovering it because it'll change the paradox of a lot of different things. Because I'm sure Sasquatch, no matter what way you try to divide that up, it's going to change people's perception of humans and how we've existed in history, natural history since the beginning of time. Like it's going to completely flip and misconstrue the way that people think about things, or even simply in the basic facts of, if you start acknowledging the fact that this thing exists. You have to acknowledge the fact that there might be an intelligence factor. And then once you acknowledge the intelligence factor, it's a matter of how intelligent is it? Do we need to section off this area and say that this is now a sanctuary area? Or do we have to section off this area and now say it's a reservation? Like there's a lot of additional things that kind of come into play with this that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration, that it makes sense to kind of push and hide the narrative if it will break the paradigm of control for a lot of people. And it's honestly the same thing you look at with history, honestly, when you're diving into a lot of this stuff, that if certain species, certain animals get uncovered, then it starts shifting the way that the world is viewed. And in turn, it starts pushing people's research off the back end that isn't relevant anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of the way that stuff works in the academic world is that somebody learns from somebody else, and if they discover something that pushes that person's name out of the history books, they're going to do whatever they can to try to preserve that name. And it's not necessarily always that they're afraid they're going to get kicked out of the community, but it's a matter of they have respect for that person being their person that taught them everything. So if they discover something that's going to kick them out of history, they're not going to do that because that's the person that lined them up that way. So a lot of the time, people keep certain aspects of history in, or keep certain aspects of science in, just for the sake of preserving the person's name within, the history of whatever that subject is.
Now, there are like three, I guess you can always break everything down to like three real reasons. And the way I've always thought about it, cryptozoology, what we're going to talk about now is living dinosaurs in effect. And I know pterodactyls aren't dinosaurs. So those listening at home who are paleontology nerds, don't at me. I know they're flying reptiles. They're not physically actually dinosaurs. But what I'm talking about is the idea of this primitive survivor, because the thing that's what we're talking about time wise, right? With the timeline, with the chronology of accepted time, is uniformitarian with exceptions made for catastrophes they call the great extinctions. And it's been stretched out so long as to not make any real sense, because there are various factors fighting for the kind of minds of men, for the mind of the world. There's the religious aspect of it. You have, since the days of yore and ancient, Europe and stuff like that, like Galileo being imprisoned and stuff, the Catholic Church having that kind of control over history versus science, and when they wrestled for it. Any mention of surviving dinosaurs, et cetera, is considered creationism, or considered a kind of like young Earth, talking point. So you've already seen this kind of like muddying the waters with religion. So they don't want to touch it because of religion. It's secular society, right? We believe in a secular, scientific, universal model. And anything saying that the Earth is not 2 billion, 4 billion years old is basically bending the knee to young Earth creationism in some aspect. That's how they kind of believe. There is the protection of wilderness resources and territories. And that's a very odd issue. It's something that, because I'm not responsible for it, I don't understand the necessity of it. And so obviously I'd be in a contrarian opinion to it, an opposition of it.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
But for example, in Michigan, not even talking about cryptids, but in Michigan, which I guess is a cryptid now, they paid actual wildlife trackers and experts. They paid them to do surveys on mountain lions, specifically not to find mountain lions. And when those wildlife experts found mountain lions, which, remember, the state of Michigan was convinced did not exist and was funding the study to prove they did not exist, they refused to pay them.
Dude,
and in fact,
being a Michigander, I have seen 3 cougars.
Yeah,
and I live near Detroit, so I'm not even in an area where I'd regularly be coming across cougars. Like, I saw a cougar near the city. I went up north and I saw a cougar off of the balcony, and then I was up north camping and I saw a cougar off in the distance in the woods. So 3 times. And I wasn't even trying to look for them. I've come across cougars in Michigan, and they want to try to say they don't exist here.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. So you understand. So you understand firsthand. Like the wildlife people, the wildlife authorities, parks and games, Bureau of Land Management, whatever, federal fed fucking glowies that are gonna like try to run animals, authorities and parks, the national park people, forestry services, all of that. Whatever they're in bed with, or whoever is really pulling the strings, the big money behind the forestry service, they are getting paid to ignore the existence of animals. They are blatantly lying to the people, the constituents of Michigan, like yourself, and saying that there aren't officially any mountain lions. I think they've had to admit this now because of ring cameras, etc., where they show cougars on people's porches. And like you said, in the suburbs of Detroit and things like that, let alone the small towns and the actual forests that are literally just surrounded by tree lines, etc. No, we know that as common men, we know the creatures in our environment. Now, as the more divorced we are from nature, the more urban and suburban we become. This isn't really a matter of like basic, instinctual knowledge, like basic common sense. But people who are living in the forest clearly are saying that their world includes these creatures. And the government, for whatever reason, lack of a better word, the government is telling us, no, they don't. And the government is paying experts to tell them, no, they don't. Even though the experts know, yes, they are. The experts immediately found evidence for them. And like I said, they're just there. They're just there. And yet we're told they are not. And for whatever reason, that's the second pillar. And the third pillar is the same, but more for academia. Whereas that's the kind of like the government, like for whatever reason, the government is lying. Academia, for whatever reason, is completely lying to itself. And it's completely creating models, like I said, of brainwashing that rival a religion within the secular academic world. It's a pseudoscience at best. The paleontology that they teach, the biology that they teach, the zoology that teach is the most basic. Like I remember college biology classes, studying cells, studying muscle structure, bone structure, studying basic animal families and kingdoms, etc. They don't actually teach you natural philosophy. They don't actually teach you the idea of like why evolution actually occurs, the idea of fulfilling niches, the food web, ecologies, things like that. For most part, you can take your basic college classes and have no clue why animals look the way they do or act the way they do, or what the actual importance of the, say, biological balance in biomes is and things like that, or what these real potentials are. In fact, most people's knowledge of animals in academia or through the academic system and everything is scant. It's barely existing. And I'm not saying like I'm Beastmaster. I'm not saying I can walk with the lions and, and I swing from the trees with chimpanzees and stuff. But I'm saying like I've just allowed myself through watching National Geographic and watching Animal Planet religiously over the last 20 years and stuff like that to really realize that we don't know shit about animals, and they are extremely. They have a lot of potential. Like they have remarkably, almost miraculous abilities that we have no clue how they even originated these in evolution. Like,
I mean, even just trying to categorize them, man.
We don't know how shit works. Yeah, we just do not know, and we are still like we like I said, everyone says we haven't mapped 85% of the world's oceans. We don't understand 99.9% of the stuff that we already know. That we don't understand how any of it works. We can only get fish and put them in jars. That's where we are in the game. We don't know how anything really came to be, even by the laws of actual science. Remember, and it's a pseudoscience. They run on two contradictory principles. The principle of abiogenesis, which is life has to originate from life, and the idea that life sprang from nothing. Those are two simultaneously held scientific beliefs, even though they contradict each other fundamentally. And yet you can tell someone this and they will tell you that you're the moron because you don't trust the science. It's the same thing. It's like you can't go to an actual professor who is so indoctrinated in this stuff and be like, dinosaurs could still be alive. They would have evolved and look nothing like what you would traditionally think a dinosaur would look like. In fact, you would only know about it if you were educated in dinosaurs yourself. And they will look at you and call you a fucking idiot, even though they know that mankind doesn't live in but maybe 5-10% of the surface world. Out of those environments, we only live internally inside our buildings and thus aren't looking outward. Most of America is completely untouched. The wilderness, the west part of America, is 75% government land and it has not been developed yet. It's mostly wildlife reserve and national park. Alaska is mostly completely empty. Canada is completely empty. If you would actually break it down,
the entire population's all in the bottom, touching the U.S. As soon as you start getting about, a quarter of the way up, everything, if you look at the demographic maps, it's all like 0 to 4 living in those areas. Like, it's ridiculous.
Ridiculous. No, it's empty. And that's the thing, like the idea of us taming the land, and no matter where we are, mankind is completely aware of 100% of their environment. It's a joke. It's 100. It's a bad joke at that. instance of cryptozoology is simply someone going outside and going, what the fuck is that? Because they've been told that these things don't exist. And when they see them, it's just like, oh, everything I know is just changed. Everything I know is just kind of fallen on my head, the whole deck of cards. And that the idea that we're number one in the ecosystem, we're number one in the food chain, we're number one smartest creature on earth, the only intelligence that, that's here, etc., the only thing with thumbs and fire. That's not the case, and it doesn't even matter that it is, because it doesn't. We're just one part of a system, and we always have been, and we might be a bunch of those pieces, but it's all just a big puzzle. And the entire kind of magic with cryptozoology is that I do recognize that wherever mankind goes, they become the dominant life form, but they chase everything away. Everything runs from us, and thus seeing any part of nature becomes a magical gift. Because we're so fucking, like, I don't know, loud and dangerous that everything with intelligence seems to just want to ignore us and leave us alone. And we only see these cryptids when we go into the literal furthest reaches of our territory and domain, the literal edges of our homes, the literal edges of the known regions and stuff like that, right? Like, the literally wilderness, the frontier. It's the here be dragons thing. Because I think it's inverse. Once we get to these levels, once mankind actually kind of processes everything, it becomes mundane, but also they just flee from us. They run from us. And it's this continuous cat and mouse game of our encroaching populations with its noise and its pollution and its lights and its cars and its music and its like stink, its human fucking stink, and just like the idea like humans just it's overtly human, and any creature that actually is of a natural balance just it doesn't want to even be 10 miles from us, and so it flees and it flees and it flees and it flees. And that's kind of like the philosophical backing of this cryptozoology.
I mean, try finding somebody in their mansion if you've never been in their mansion before. These things are fully aware of their environment and every single thing that's around them. And we try to go into that area and say, yep, it doesn't exist because I can't find them, even though we've never spent any time in there and we don't know it like the back of our hands. Like I said, imagine trying to find somebody that lives in a mansion when you've never been in that place before, and you don't find them on the first walk through and say, yep, they must not exist. They're not here.
and trust me, the idea of actively hunting these things it's kind of like it never really gets like the idea of the odds of that, the number of that, the people who are actively hunting these things, the people who are hunters, etc., that go out and they're looking for that. None, maybe like 10, entire North America, 10 real active cryptozoologists that are actually going out and searching for these creatures. Not even like maybe 100 amateurs that do it once or twice a year that might go out in Bigfoot hunts. And it's like, and then the actual ones that know what they're doing versus just amateurs who saw Finding Bigfoot and want a tree knock and then hoot and holler and things like that. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think everything that we have seen in cryptozoology over the last 20 years on TV has been the wrong thing to think and do, because that's a joke. It's absolutely ridiculous. The Finding Bigfoot crowd and that cult of tree knocking and yelling and
why would you
hollering.
call something in with aggression? Like, that doesn't make sense with any other animal. Why would it work for Bigfoot? Like, assumably, if you're banging on your chest, you're smacking on things. You look at primate behavior and anything else, those are signs of aggression. Those aren't going to call things in. That's always been the craziest thing to me, is that why is that the one animal that you use these aggressive signs to try to call in? Like, the serious Sasquatch researchers that have the best luck are the ones that sit and let these things come in out of curiosity.
That's why I want to employ natural philosophy, because natural philosophy includes the behaviorology of creatures, especially like primates and things like that. Well, anything. It includes the idea of, from the animal's perspective too, from the creature's perspective too, because like just given this like idea of Bigfoot, like, if you are able to smell anything that's artificial in the forest, if you're able to hear anything that might sound like one or more people walking, and imagine dry leaves. If anyone moves, if anyone has anything foreign to the forest, if anyone wore any cologne or smoked a cigarette in the last 24 hours or took a shower, your game is up. It knows they're miles in advance. Basically, you have to understand these creatures. Like, realistically. It's not a game. It's not a horror movie. I also have an episode coming up on my Spotify channel that's going to cover the idea of pulp and pop cryptozoology and how that's ruined the actual study of cryptozoology because of the idea. They made it the Funko Pop. They made it the Reddit. They made it the TikTok kind of like, let's go find Mothman with a flashlight and a burlap sack snake kind of hunt type thing that Boy Scouts used to get tricked into doing. They have turned it into that, but it's a very serious study. I would highly recommend like Michael Merchant and studying Snowwalker Prime as his YouTube channel. He's a tracker. He's an actual tracker, and he's actually won tracking contests and stuff like that. And some of his videos where he talks about, the stuff that you need to know on how to just navigate the woods and look for sign. I can tell you that 99% of those people, like cryptozoologists who go into the woods that look for stuff, don't have any clue about. They have no clue about how to look for spore, look for sign, how to track, anything like that. And these are just basic, like if you're going to find deer, if you're going to try to stalk mountain goat or anything like that, bighorn, you're going to be in the woods for days. And it's not like people think. Those deer, those animals that people hunt on the land are basically domesticated. Those animals are basically retarded as well. Like deer, white-tailed deer are stupid. They'll walk right up to you. They don't care. They're retarded. They're dumb. I would say like the idea that mankind is a thinking, cunning, stalking animal that's going to get out of a van or a truck smelling like cologne and in the city after drinking a big cup of coffee and walk around the woods for 4 hours and find, any kind of like track or stuff. It's preposterous. It's a 1 in a million anything actually gets found that way, let alone it hides the actual, like, that's the reason why we don't find any real evidence, because no one's seriously doing it. And the people I do think are seriously doing it are signed to NDAs. They're signed to programs and they're signed to groups inside these authority structures that don't let them speak on these matters. I once had a friend who, after the Navy, was contracted by the government to take people up mountainsides for various like geospatial GPS type hookup things. And he would take people up mountainsides as like a hiker, because it takes a lot of physical work to do this, like mountain climbing and stuff. And he said they saw some shit like that was straight up Sasquatch, and they were all signed to NDAs and stuff like that. But then that's the people who are actually on mountaintops, in the Rocky Mountains, people who are there professionally and people who are there, it's not like, that are there that aren't allowed to really talk freely about why they're there, or they're not going to talk about why they're there. Like mountain men who live on mountains full time, they're hermits. They're not going to have a YouTube channel. They're not going to post it on Instagram, their lives. They don't even have power in their cabin type thing. Like, these are the kinds of people that we really need to talk to. These are the kinds of people who really see this kind of stuff. It's there. It's for real. And the other kinds of people who see this kind of stuff are just the lucky few. The lucky few who you had an episode a couple of days ago, and you were talking about roads, highways, and cryptids being found on the edges of these highways and stuff. And you were like, maybe it's hypnotic, maybe it alters your perception.
Oh, I'm glad you listened to that one. Yeah, when you're in that driving state and you get into that like flow state, like almost like meditating trance like state, that's what I was referring to, because it's always roadside sightings for a lot of this stuff. But most of the time when people are doing these, they're like just in that zone, completely like mesmerized by the road, and all of a sudden, boom, here's something that they're not used to seeing, and it draws their attention away. Like maybe you're only seeing it because you're in that hypnotic state, so you're seeing into a parallel.
But I also say that when you made that point, the kind of basic facts, you break it down, human beings are only in the wilderness when we're driving on highways. 9 times out of 10, we're driving between communities, or we're driving through the country roads. We only see it from our car because people generally do not walk around in the woods. And people, let's say at night, generally are not outside for any reason besides driving. So we see it in the headlights and stuff. The roads are this thing that it's like a buffet. Dogman sightings have been seen eating carrion. Bigfoot, no doubt, would might maybe come get some deer that are hit by these cars. Also, they have no cover because all the vegetation has been cut by the road. In a tree line, their natural camouflage would be active, and thus, if they were only, say, 10 feet back in the bush, we wouldn't actually be able to see them. The road is our advantage. It's our home turf. As I say, it's kind of like these liminal spaces. This is the natural philosophy of it. This is the natural philosophy of these ideas of sightings. It's logical. It's rational that the highways become like the old campfires of cowboys, etc., where you see something at the edge of the firelight. You see something at the edge of the headlight and stuff like that. The human beings are only able to see at that edge of that light. We have very bad night vision, and every animal knows that. And if you look at every cryptid that's actually convincing, you always see them at the edge of roads.
Roads or waterways. Waterways is the other one too.
Yeah, I was going to say, the idea, even Loch Ness, the Nessie was seen once crossing a road. Almost on the first sighting, he was seen crossing a road. And that's what I'm saying. The idea of it, where are people? They're on the road. They're in their cars. They're driving through nowhere, the middle of nowhere. Where are these creatures? If they're going to be seen, they have to be in front of these, kind of like all the people. So they have to be on the road. They have to, it all kind of makes sense. Even the idea why Nessie was on the road, getting roadkill, getting maybe just trying to cross it. It's cut through its natural environment, but it's exposed because of this man-made road. It works perfectly in the logic of what we're talking about, and that the roads would be the easiest way to keep hunting cryptids. Is to set up people on the road just driving back and forth with cameras, constantly trying to record in these areas.
Say, and the other funny part, since you're mentioning roadside sightings, I've talked to a few different researchers who have talked about these weird cover-ups of more than likely probably somebody hitting a Sasquatch. And like one of the ones he was talking about, he said like the full cleanup was like done within like 10 minutes. They ended up coming back and like everything was gone. You couldn't even tell that there was a sign of anybody even being there. And assumably, if there are these creatures, there are these sightings that happen near roads. I'm assuming these things are going to get hit once in a while. And it seems like there are going to be these massive cover-ups for these. But one of the things that I threw potentially at it is, how many people are drunk driving when they're out in the middle of the night driving like that. And if they hit something, they're not even fully aware of what they hit. So how hard is it to cover up these things by making them say, oh, they hit a homeless person. Oh, they hit this. Oh, they hit that. And then you just have all of these different possible, creature hit roadside sightings that are just getting brushed off because the person isn't aware of fully what was happening because they may have been under the influence. And you can just cover it up again with the homeless person because nobody's ever going to ask another question about it, and boom, it's just gone. Or if you clean it up fast enough, if you're in the middle of nowhere.
I would also like to put out that, for example, some of the best videos of Bigfoot or best eyewitness statements have been from, officers, police officers, whose job is it to drive the roads and things like that. Like their job is to be on the road driving around. I think some of the best ones are just like in the modern day, like the last 10 years, this is like a recent thing too. Like that. Yeah.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. So stay tuned. And now back to the show.
I would have to say there is a concerted effort between the roadkill people, I don't even know what to call it. It's not even like a government agency. It's contractors. It's private contractors that get paid by these authorities to keep up this cover up. I don't know exactly what government authority gives them that power, but it's there. It's real. I've heard about the men in plaid, or men in flannel. They're like a men in black for people who see Bigfoot. They
come in twos. There's the guy in flannel, and then there's another guy who's usually dressed up a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
It's weird. There's like these Men in Black motifs that pop up for different things, but I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about that one. It's like, the flannel Men in Black for Sasquatch.
I don't know if it's a government. I don't know if it's national parks. I don't know if it's wildlife and game. I don't know if it's like CIA Men in Black. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's the Army. I don't know what the actual modus operandi is either, besides the fact they cover it up. And I've heard in several situations, Native Americans and their reservations also cover this shit up too. So that Native Americans like Navajo and the Navajo reservations, they have cops and what they would consider even special forces that fly in helicopters out to places either to deal with Sasquatches or just to basically harass and intimidate eyewitnesses into staying quiet. A lot of the cases that we hear about are like your mundane, like, oh, I just saw a Bigfoot. I saw one walking. I saw one doing XYZ. We don't even hear about the Bigfoot cases where they are attacked. People are attacked by them. People have them intrude into their homes. People are stalked by them, except for months, at their residences, etc. And these cases generally have a lot of cover up by the police and dealing with reports, dealing with, situations. Definitely would recommend Bob Gimlin, the YouTuber. He definitely has a lot of great, interviews with people who are talking about just how intense these situations can get. It's not just, oh, I saw Bigfoot. He was walking, through the tree line. I found footprints, etc. No, that they will reach into your house. They will try to get into your house, get whoever they want, like children typically, from homes. The police in these areas know all about it. The police and government authorities have been notified, obviously called many, many times about this. They have case files, no doubt. Now, what keeps those case files secret? I don't know. And these X files that you could say exist throughout, rural towns definitely do contain some crazy reports, and we'll never get them because we don't know where to start looking.
Dude, we got a lot of those in Michigan for like dogman stuff. Like I've come across a bunch of reports of stuff that's been completely covered up, like people getting killed by these things in northern Michigan. There's one person that came out and was basically saying that he was basically aware that everybody at the campsite he was at knew that this happened to people once in a while at this campsite, and he was basically told by the cops, like, oh, you saw a bear, and that person that goes screaming outside asking for help, they just got attacked by a bear, and kind of were giving him this like stern look when they were saying it, and then there was no reports of any of it, not even an animal attack being put out. Like even in Michigan, man, like the dogman stuff is just, people don't realize how much of a huge cover up that is. Like most researchers that I know that come to Michigan really trying to heavily investigate the Michigan dogman start getting followed by these unmarked vehicles, and the people will say like, all right, we already know your intentions, like you need to get out of here before we start having a problem. Like they're so far wrapped up into that stuff that they already know researchers that are going to come and start looking for that stuff. Like there's something huge, a huge cover up with this stuff, like just trying to hide the potential danger from people.
Yeah, you have the authorities, and when I say authorities, I mean vertically, like the entire, like say town, county sheriff, constable, judges, etc. They can make your life very uncomfortable as a cryptozoologist, as someone who's a researcher, if you delve too deep into this. And that could be simply actual physical, like slashing your tires. These are real things that people don't talk about. Like they're expensive. Like you got to get replaced. You're not making a lot of money. Someone fucks up your car. Yeah, I'm going home. I don't have to deal with this kind of thing. They will smash your windshields out. They will harass you, keep you up all night. Like a cop will just knock at your door at like 3 a.m. telling you everyone has to get out for a fire drill or whatever. And you're just there for an hour before they let you, fucking with you constantly, letting you know that they know who you are. And locals don't like this attention as much as people might like to think. Like you go into some, say, we're talking about Sasquatch now, like the Sasquatch communities, you go into some Northern California towns and they don't like outsiders. They don't like people coming in to mock them, they think, or to gawk at them, or maybe you have to do a lot of like real work, like getting to know them, getting accepted by them. Dave Paulides talks a lot about that, getting to know people in the reservation, getting in deep with them in their good graces so that they can share with you what is very sensitive as a subject. And these, like I said, the accounts of really what's going on out here, people go missing. People knew these people. These people were people's friends and family members. And this is the kind of stuff that they don't talk about, but they'll say like serial killers or just missing people. We all know about the missing people phenomenon, hundreds of thousands of missing people, etc. No one knows where they all went. And then there's a connection with missing 411, national parks. How are these people missing in such weird and unconventional ways if it's not something taking them, eating them, literally taking them and eating them? And then you start realizing, like, yeah, there's a real effect to it. There's a real cause and effect to it. And it's all covered up. It's 100% covered up. Talk missing 411. We all saw and know about that case. It's been like over 10 years. Trying to get Freedom of Information Act files on missing people just because they're missing is almost impossible. It's like pulling teeth with the federal authorities. It's like, they show that they don't want to work with you. They do not want you to investigate this, and they don't want to answer any uncomfortable questions. And these would be like FBI agents. These would be like park rangers telling you, no, you're never going to see these files. Like suck it. Or I know it's illegal, but I'm going to put them in the shredder right now.
Or they're the ones where you get the redacted files back and like 90% of the page is covered up and there's like 2 sentences that aren't covered up. Or they'll do the thing where you have to have the exact specific wording. It'll be something like, I need something that's from the date of September 29th, 2005. And they'll say, all right, well, we don't have that because you didn't say SEP 26 2025. They'll try to they'll go down to like little tiny final bureaucratic little pieces to try to make it so you can't get the information because you don't know exactly what the word for word exact letters are on the page that you're looking for, even though you know what the document is. But
and I'll talk about this. This is hilarious, and to bring it back to Bob Gimlin thing, because Bob Gimlin, who has a YouTube video, he's about Bigfoot. Typically, he's a Bigfoot. He's a young guy. He's probably young, probably like your age, around like in his mid-20s, right? He stumbled upon something that's really fascinating. Shark attack records are apparently completely covered up and underreported officially. It's fucking hilarious. When you watch this guy's video, he talks about all the shark attacks that happened in the year 2016, I believe, 2016 or 2018. And he talks about how he had to go through individual records in individual countries kind of to get like news stories. And the official shark attacks that were listed for that year were like 6, right? And they showed the map. Like this is the actual official shark attack records keepers. Like it's a group. It's a non-charity group, right? And it's given government funding to do this. And it has a little map online. And you click on the little icons, and it tells you the little news story behind every shark attack. It was off by over 10. Just on this guy's research alone. And that is only verifiable. I saw a guy get bit by a shark attacks, let alone just what happened. I don't know. He went to go swim and he's not back yet. Let alone what happened. Oh, I don't know. We just found a guy's leg.
Dude, the tourism industry plays a huge factor in a lot of this stuff. Like, I'm sure that definitely 100% tourism factor, because if you say there's a shark attack at this beach, people aren't going to come. Same with a lot of this cryptid stuff. A lot of these like places where people go camping at, or people go hiking at, for example. It's a matter of not wanting to lose that tourist money, because if they hear that there's attacks happening here, there's this happening here, then people are going to stop going there. Like, I've talked to enough DNR people that say that we'll have sightings, and we are told to put up signs that say, like, bear in the area, things like that. Like, they completely dance around the thing because they don't want to destroy tourism. Like, that's a huge other component too, is, why are they covering all this stuff up? Because if people are fully aware that there's a tribe of Sasquatch in this area, do you think most people are ever going to go camping in that area again? Hell no. And that's less money that they're able to make, because, you got to pay to be able to go to a campground. You got to pay for this. It's tourist money. Like, you got to follow the money with a lot of this stuff.
What it shows is that there either is a massive amount of incompetence at the very highest level, and there is no other shark attack tally global, record keeper. There is no competition. It's a monopoly. There is one group that is the official, quote unquote, global shark attack tracking agency. I guess, I don't know, agency, right? And that their work is funded as an NGO, government organization, nonprofit, to do this global record keeping. for the benefit of science. And they are overtly inaccurately keeping records to the point that it's super obvious. It's either because they're incompetent at the highest level to the most extreme degree. We're talking people who can't even count and do their jobs, or they are intentionally keeping those numbers as low as possible to protect sharks, I guess. Exactly like you said, protect tourists, like to present a image of the world that is inaccurate to the common person, like a common researcher who goes, Google, let me see how many shark attacks there were this year. Search, and it's going to tell you a lie, because the official record keeper that the government sponsors to do this is lying to us. Provable fact. There is no actually provable that they are underreporting shark attacks on each coast in the United States and the Caribbean and Mexico, Latin America, Africa, Middle East, Europe, Australia, Southeast Asia, not reporting the actual data. This is a massive breach of trust. This is a massively corrupt system that we call the real official scientific body of the world, if this is allowed to happen. And it's done because literally no one fears any repercussions. Science is not a democracy. You do not get voted out of being a scientist. And as a scientist, I can say, like, literally, this is the case. As a marine biologist, if I was a professor of marine biology, I can go, students, there's only been 8 shark attacks a year. Google this thing. This is my citation, right? Citation, actual government agency that, does sharks. I work for these people. We know what we're talking about. I don't have to get on a boat. I don't have to be in the ocean. I don't have to actually know what I'm talking about. I don't have to have the count right. I don't need to know what kind of sharks actually did it. I just have to go, I looked at this website, and because this website is official, I'm smart. I meet professor, you student, you do what I say, or fail, I'll pass or fail. And that's literally the system that we live in. It's that dumb and cartoonish. Park rangers might be really well-meaning park rangers, but they are, hey, boss, is Bigfoot real? No. Okay. Like, that's what they're doing. They're following orders. They're just dealing with inaccurate records. And that's just it. Like, people don't know if Dogman ate a person 10 years ago at this campground, and every 10 years Dogman migrates through this area and picks off campers, through its local hunts. And it's just that year again, and someone's just going to get munched by it, and they let that happen. No one's keeping records. If they are keeping accurate records, we're not getting them. We're not even getting the shark records. And why are they defending sharks? We all know sharks eat people. We all know they do, yet that's not the politically correct presentation of the world, I guess, we're given. And you can only imagine what really is not just talked about, what really they know about and aren't talking about, like, in terms of this kind of stuff. Not only the classics, not only Sasquatch or Mothman or UFOs or anything, just like basic shit. Like, are there giant squid attacks? Who the hell knows? We're not going to know. If there are, we're never going to know. Luska's real. Like that's the thing, like giant octopuses. There is shit in this world that we don't even get to talk about because it's so we don't have a chance of a scientist actually studying it seriously or anything like that. It's strictly in the domain of cryptozoology. We're talking about pterodactyls and stuff like that, pterodons. No scientist would take these things seriously. And it's because they use authoritarian models of history and of science that tells them that they're extinct and have been extinct for 65 million years, except, one flies by and everyone, thousands of people see it, you have thousands of sightings every year. It's estimated that hundreds of thousands of people have seen them over the years. They've been seen across the world. They have been videotaped. They have so much, plausible reality to them, as well as the more we learn about them in a paleontological sense, the more they become flesh and blood and realistic creatures. And we start realizing that they not only could survive to the present day, but most likely would never go extinct, given how dominant they were. The more we get educated on it, the more we become aware of just how present this is. This is an existent creature. This is a surviving creature. But academia will use that same evidence to prove that it's extinct, to prove that we don't know what we're talking about when we see these things, when we have these eyewitness accounts, when, we gather these sightings, and then, it becomes this almost intentionally obfuscated game of he said, she said kind of thing, where the scientists are telling us that we're wrong and that it's extinct and it's been extinct for 65 million years, and then we're saying, no, we just saw one.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to that deep conversation you crave. I mean, they try to use pop culture and like movies to try to make a mockery out of a lot of this stuff. Like, prime example, Harry and the Hendersons. Obviously, completely ridiculous, spoofy idea of what Sasquatch is. And you look into that movie and you realize that part of the funding for that ended up coming from the U.S. government. You look into a lot of these alien movies and you realize the same thing, such as Close Encounters was another movie that was funded by the government. And then you start getting into... What was the last thing you were just mentioning? Because I didn't know. Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Jurassic Park is another prime example. They turned this whole idea of modern dinosaurs in the modern day into this idea of mockery. But then you start actually looking into the origin of Jurassic Park. You start looking into like the Lost World, and you start looking into the weird aspects of what was the guy who's looking for the City of Z?
That was Perry Fawcett.
Yes. He actually was in contact with the guy who wrote The Lost World, and he was actually talking about this plateau that was in South America where there's actually these species of dinosaurs that were supposedly still there and existing, and he was collecting all these stories of everything. So they took this idea that he was trying to cryptically describe and explain this place, and there's other researchers that have tried to find this exact location because they claim that he refers to it cryptically in the book, but they've turned it into this completely scientific mockery sense where if you say, did you notice that Jurassic Park was based on a book where somebody was trying to cryptically try to tell people about a real location, like anybody's going to think it's fiction. Like they'll take anything that seems like anybody's going to be able to run with it and actually start to prove it. And then they'll just try to instantly take it and put it into this other realm so that anybody who hears it will assume that it's fiction. Another prime example that's going around today is everybody's talking about these Glimmerman sightings, but the closest thing people can relate it to is the cloak from Harry Potter or Predator. But as soon as you hear somebody hears Predator or the cloak from Harry Potter, you got people laughing at him. Like I posted something on TikTok with somebody who had a Glimmerman encounter, and the half of the people were serious and like, oh yeah, dude, like that's crazy. The other half were like, oh, Harry Potter, Predator, and they just sent all these like laughy faces and stuff. Like it's intentionally trying to muddy the waters by putting out the real information, but adding this whole joke along with it so that if anybody actually brings up that real piece of information, they just get laughed off with the rest of it. And like I said, a lot of these popular movies diving into all of these different phenomenons, you start looking into some of the groups that funded them, and it may not be directly like the U.S. government, but it's a subgroup of a subgroup of a subgroup that has a connection into the U.S. government. And it's like, all right, weird. Why do they want to fund all these cryptid movies, all these UFO movies? It's because they're clearly trying to spin and push a narrative and push on predictive programming.
Or if you, for example, compare and contrast public opinion and like popular pop culture stuff with paleontological reality, right? And they'll say that's what separates real from like, the movies and fakeness. Like pterodactyls are always shown because of our limited knowledge and our pop culture fantasies without feathers. They're scaly. They make these terrible roars, like the screeches and stuff. And they're always this like really violent, hyper aggressive creature. Like Jurassic Park 3 has really like, pterosaurs that are just fucking people up, and they're like flying around. And Jurassic World, has that scene with the pterodactyls like eating people, picking them up and like dropping them and stuff. That is so inaccurate to the actual like concept of what paleontology shows. Paleontology, for example, in 2022 in Brazil found that some pterodactyls had feathers, and this pushes back the evolution of feathers itself 200 million years, or 100 million years, so that feathers first evolved 200 million years ago. That gives them 140 something years until the 65 million year extinction event to evolve feathers and feathered bodies.
just to continue on with that too, I mean, look at all these ancient dragon encounters, and everybody looked at it as folklore and fiction, but every single one of them were these flying lizard things with feathers. So it's like now we're coming back to it and seeing the context now, we're just like, all right, these things were clearly still existing when people were around, because where else would the idea of dragons can't come from?
Well, then the idea of like, okay, well, if they were dinosaurs or if they were living around the times of dinosaurs, they need a warm environment and they need a lush jungle environment. Like they know dinosaurs all like jungles and swamps, and they like big. No one even stops and thinks about the actual environment that these creatures would exist in, that we are just officially are told about. They existed mostly in northern cold climates. Their feathers, even the large-bodied ones, would keep them warm, and they would be no doubt still in the same territories they're in now. Northern Canada, the Great Lakes, Appalachia, West Coast of America, Alaska, etc. With these feathers keeping them warm, they would also appear to the human eye as birds. They wouldn't look immediately identifiable as a Jurassic Park pterodactyl. The actual specifics that I'm talking about in reference right now are the archozoids. The archozoids are your Quetzalcoatlus, your representatives of these species of pterodactyl that are 30 to 40 feet wingspan, giraffe-sized, 8-foot-long skulled creatures that are majestic. They're flying titans,
almost like the Thunderbirds too, just to throw in even some more context.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm saying. You start looping around, like the modern science is actually is helping illustrate, and eventually the two worlds, like they'll never meet, but they get like really parallel and close to each other. And then you start saying, well, if they had, like I said, the Quetzalcoatlus mythology, you start seeing Thunderbird mythology in people.
Look at condors and tell me that doesn't look like it could have evolved from something down. I mean, look at their heads.
Well, I mean, we're talking about like when people are like the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is controversial because birds aren't 30, 40 feet long. Like they're not like we have like the Argentina or Argentavis, or that one that existed in Argentina, but that's not where Thunderbird mythologies exist. Thunderbird mythologies exist in the Pacific Northwest and stuff, and they were like, well, maybe just Argentavis, survived and went up north. Or maybe just the already existing populations of these gigantic pterodactyls, which already called the region home and did so traditionally for millions of years, never left. Maybe their populations got smaller. Maybe they're just smart enough to stay away from us. But the truth is, the sightings of these creatures shows an unchanged migratory pattern. It shows that human beings are just either living on the outskirts of this pattern or have forced the pattern to change around them, like move away from their major cities, et cetera, because of light pollution. But also, this is the actual reason why we're seeing them, is because we're crossing paths with their traditional lifestyle, and we've created legends around them every generation that we've seen them until the modern one, because we're educated now as a society, as a civilization, to understand them for what they really are. Pterodactyls. We went through Thunderbirds, we went through the Quetzalcoatlus, we went through the Snallygaster, the Jersey Devil, the Big Bird sightings of the 20th century, dragon sightings of the Old West, like the dragon in Tombstone, for example. That's a really important sighting to all of this. There was an entire genre of Wild West.
The Van Meter Visitor, sighting. Just to throw that one in too, because that was what was it, Iowa? Visitor. That literally was like a pterodactyl that came out of a cave or out of a cavern or a cave.
Exactly, it literally came out of a cave, a mine. They were doing some mining, and it came out of the subterranean realm, and it came out and it was bioluminescent. It had leathery wings, the beak. The horn that represent the pterodactyls have this counterweight horn on the back of their heads that's represented in the sightings. The fact that it had this ultrasound screech to it when it did, like they said, it knocked them out. It literally knocked them out with the sound it made. These creatures are immensely powerful. But I also think that they're also intelligent. I think that they survived. I think anything with the ability to fly is intelligent. It has to be, because it has to be able to like reason its own, momentum and trajectory, et cetera. Like parrots and corvexes, birds are really intelligent creatures. Like they can mimic sound. They understand.
Look at ravens.
Ravens, yeah.
Crows. They say that they have the intelligence of a 7-year-old. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, these things are because they fly, because anything that has to, like monkeys got their intelligence because they move through 3D trees and they have to understand depth perception and logic. Like if I'm holding one branch with one hand and instead of like, it gets these dexterous things. Birds have that. No doubt pterodactyls would have this. And no doubt this is probably a young one or just a various species of it. Species wise, there are over 150 known pterodactyl species, like in proper pterosaurs, including all of the different varieties that are, and there are potentially as many as 193. Some of those are under review. Some of them are under review still, and no doubt there are thousands we haven't even found yet, because fossilization's a bitch. It's almost a miracle that anything gets made into a fossil. It has to be a very unique process that has to be done in a certain amount of time. Any disturbance of it can ruin the fossilization process. Literally 99.9% of all life that has ever lived has gone without being fossilized. And what we get is literally just that 0.1%, right? So no doubt, I'm not saying the same species existed 65 million years concurrently today. I'm also not saying I'm convinced that it happened 65 million years ago. I don't know about the chronologies of our world. I really don't. And I think a lot of it's up for debate. I think people are really dead set on this idea that it happened 65 million years ago where they all died out and none of them survived. That seems kind of silly to me to assume that. I will give you dinosaurs. I will say, hey, dinosaurs died out, but every paleontology person knows that pterodactyls are not dinosaurs. They're reptiles, like the mosasaurs and the sea monsters, like the elasmosaur and the plesiosaurs. They're not true dinosaurs. They were sea reptiles. They were absolutely more related to snakes, turtles, crocodiles, lizards. The things that survived, they're the creatures that lived unchanged, unfazed by the great extinction event of the Chicxulub asteroid that smashed into Yucatan. No scientist will argue that. Crocodiles, turtles, snakes, lizards basically walked through that bitch. They might have died off, but they came back and they still survived in their great numbers and in their sizes, etc. Sure, crocodiles aren't 40 feet long anymore, but relatively that Nile crocodile, that saltwater crocodile is the same exact crocodile that lived 250 million years ago. It's the same thing. No doubt these pterodactyls could have done that. They can fly. They can live in any environment they wish, and distance is not an issue for creatures that can fly. People need to get that out of their mind. There have been flamingos that have been found in Canada. There have been, storks that fly from Europe to Africa. The longest migration continuously is like, I have the figures here, let me pull it up. Is something like 8,000 miles continuous without touching the ground. And that's not done by a large bird, mind you. Like, large birds have a massive benefit or advantage when it comes to flying. So, yeah, the bar-tailed godwit is a bird that flies for 8,425 miles straight without landing. That's what we know of birds. That's one bird. And then the Arctic tern. The Arctic tern has the longest migration of any known animal, and it flies 59,650 miles in 1 year. That's 96,000 kilometers. It flies from the Arctic Circle, North Pole, to the Antarctic every year. And that's a tern. It's a bird with maybe 1.5 foot wingspan.
That's what I was going to say. If these small birds are regularly making these migration patterns, then, I mean, why would it be out of question to think that anything big isn't easily able to go from one side of the country, for example, to the other, or even if it's not even during migration. I mean, if you have that big of a wingspan, there's nothing directly in your way. Like, you're going to be able to travel from that side to that side at a lot faster of a rate than what most people expect. And I mean, when you start getting into these like mountain ranges and stuff over on like, the west side of the US and stuff, I mean, you got miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of mountains, and you have a bunch of peaks that nobody is anywhere near. You have a bunch of areas that nobody's anywhere near. A lot of these big things could be living up in these mountainous areas, flying around regularly for miles and miles, and nobody would even come close to even seeing these things.
You got deep forest. Deep forest areas are incredible environments. We're talking about like seas of trees in which, even if you were able to observe, if you were underneath the canopy, and this isn't America, this isn't Canada, this is temperate rainforest. There are many rainforests in North America, in the continental United States, and in Canada. People don't see, this is also part of that natural philosophy thing. It's a gestalt, holistic idea of natural sciences. I will give you that these creatures will need massive amounts of resources, but they're not stuck to one location like, say, a Bigfoot might, or anything really, but like they could go from rainforest to rainforest across America. There's a rainforest in the Pacific Northwest. There's a rainforest in northern Idaho. There's a rainforest around the Great Lakes in the Ohio Valley. There's a rainforest in Appalachia in West Virginia. There are temperate forests like the Adirondacks, the Pine Barrens, all up and down the East Coast. When it comes to the Southwest, they could use sky islands. Sky islands are a fascinating biome because they're high elevation, high altitude, desert environments, but they get much more moisture and water because they're literally high enough for the clouds and fog to form on them. So on these islands, it's tropical. This is what you were talking about with the Percy Fawcett. He was in Venezuela or Bogota, I believe, and there are sky islands in the jungle. And in Venezuela, there is an island, like they say dinosaurs.
It's the one that's they make the joke references in Up. What is it called? It's like Paradise Falls or something like that. They call it in that movie.
Yeah. And exactly, and there are, and it said no limitations for this creature's mobility. Okay, so not only that, let's talk about the actual history, besides like its possibilities to go on these sky islands. Well, let's just finish up the sky islands thing. So he's got these sky islands. It's got this environment to go. And this is just North America, the United States. Caves, of active volcanoes, national parks, wilderness zones. These are already like basically cordoned off areas. It's not flying.
Oh, I mean, those sky islands too, even if you have some of the best equipment, like it's in the middle of nowhere, and then you got to go up a straight up elevation that goes up for hundreds of feet. So it's like there's a lot of these things that people have never stepped foot on because they're almost impossible to get to. You can't fly a helicopter over to it and land a helicopter on it. There's no clearing. Like, these things could be up there with full nests, full babies, all that stuff, and we would know nothing about it because there is no possible way for humans to get to some of these places. Not to mention all the government intervention, because the one that they believe was the one that could possibly be where Jurassic World is based on. That one, they have a bunch of different cartels that are all around the area, so they won't let people go anywhere in the jungle. On top of that, it's divided up by 4 different countries. They don't let anybody in there because there's government presence, and they blame the cartels and everything. Like, you cannot get to these places.
And the power of national parks. Like, people don't realize the national parks and the wilderness zones, you can't operate a drone. You can't bring a movie equipment style camera. You can't bring say weapons in a lot of these places. You can't bring any motor vehicles. You can't bring anything besides what you can carry, right? And so there are very few people who are willing, knowledgeable, and experienced enough to even begin this expedition, this trek, in these environments, let alone that are actively looking for something that shouldn't exist, that's been dead for 65 billion years. And I will say this, though, it's not even that they're flying in these wilderness zones, these very far removed frontiers. They're flying over cities. They're flying over communities. They're flying over where people are building communities where their ancestral lands used to be. Case in point, The most common cities to see pterodactyls in the United States is Los Angeles and in the California coasts. Also conveniently where they have the pine devil cryptids, because they are seen typically smaller varieties between 3 to 6 feet wingspans with tails with diamond ends, but they're seen literally all up and down where the LA River used to run. Now it's a concrete. You've all seen Drive. We've all seen the LA River in hundreds of thousands of movies and stuff like that. You know, it's iconic. It's just a storm drain now. So they have no place to hide. When a pterodactyl is flying down LA through this ancestral river using its genetic memory, its instinctive memory, people are seeing it and they get reported a lot.
Inquiries of All Reality will return after this quick commercial break. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
They get reported a lot off the coast of Oregon, where surfers like to go. Where there are these communities. They get reported a lot in Appalachia. These have different names for them, but they are reported like in Ohio. They're reported constantly in Ohio. These are current modern day reports of them in communities just off in Cleveland and Cincinnati and stuff like that. They're seen all the time flying in major urban areas. Typically, just people don't look up. People aren't looking up, and they don't make this raucous amount of noise. They fly silently and glide like condors over a major city. No one looks up over their phone nowadays, let alone people who are just sensitive to these things to see that it's not a bird. Oh, that's just a big bird, etc. Because they said they don't look like pterodactyls like people think Jurassic Park pterodactyls. These are mostly like dark feather covered large birds, but the idea of noticing that they're different, that's a 1 in a million. And you see, as time has gone on, people are more educated to now know what they're looking for. And the reports, like I said, are not as dramatic as you would want them to be, it attacked me, it swooped down and almost took my baby. No, I was outside on my porch smoking a cigarette during the afternoon as the sun was setting. I looked up, a pterodactyl flew over my house. And you're like, it was a pterodactyl. I saw the tail, I saw the little claws on its hand, I saw the beak, I saw the head, I saw surfers. I was surfing and a fog bank hit me, so I was on my board. 3 pterodactyls flew over me. They were each 10 to 20 feet long, 20 feet wide. One looked at me and made eye contact, and I could see it had intelligence behind its eyes. That's the end of the account. They were covered in gray fur. They looked exactly like the fog. That's the account. Accounts of seeing pterodactyls, seeing them at night. They flew across the moon, and then you follow them with your eyes, and you start seeing that they glow. Stuff like that. That's the roping, in the South Pacific Ocean. It's not dramatic. This is what ultimately it comes down to, is wherever there are people and these things cross paths, it's just the person on the ground seeing it fly by, seeing it go amongst its way.
Makes you wonder how many people probably could have potentially seen these things, because you talk about depth perception, and you're talking about people seeing Sasquatch and just trying to simply guess the height of Sasquatch. You add the depth of the sky and you looking up. Think about how many people could potentially see one of these things and just think that it's a bird that's closer to them, but it's actually a giant bird that's twice that distance of what they actually thought. So they just never even think about it again, say, oh, cool, a bird, and then just go about their day, That's one of the main ones, more so than Sasquatch, that I think that people can see these things regularly, fully make out what it is, and go, oh, that's a bird, and just keep walking along.
Mm-hmm. Or they just don't want to accept it, because remember, they don't exist. Remember, they don't exist. So if you're of the line, you're a teacher, etc., they don't exist. And
if you're in California, everything big's a condor. That's what I've always heard. Anytime you see a big bird, it's a condor.
You get that. There's filters. There's different filters, right? So you get people who are like, I don't care what I just saw. It's a bird. I have other things to do. I don't know what I saw, etc. And then you start getting the people who are like, I'm educated. I know I saw a pterodactyl, but they're not supposed to exist, so maybe I didn't, and they'll try to talk themselves out of it. You have people who've seen these things and can't deny them to themselves, but will keep it secret because they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to have to deal with telling someone they saw something crazy. They're not they don't want the flack. They don't want that smoke. There's a really good show called Animal X. Animal X is a cryptozoology show from the 2000s, early 2000s from Australia. And they have a segment about thunderbirds. And they show people who actually have seen real thunderbirds. And one of them is a lawyer. One of them is like a college educated, business educated lawyer. And he says he went out there specifically to disprove it because he was going out there, to kind of be like, it doesn't exist. And he saw it. And he wishes that he hadn't seen it. And it's a sincere wish. He wishes that he hadn't seen it because now he has to deal with it. He has to fucking deal with it. He can't just ignore what he saw. That kind of personality, that's that border point where you have to be honest with yourself. Then you have to be honest with others, regardless if you like the consequences or not type of thing. And that's very rare. That admission there, I would say most people fail. Most people go, I wish I didn't see this. So it's not, I didn't see this. And it's just that simple. It's a snap decision of being like, I looked outside my window. I saw a fucking pterodactyl. I closed my window and went back to playing Xbox, went back to sleeping, went back to eating, went back to watching the boob tube, whatever. It's not your problem type thing. And you don't want to even deal with the consequences of what's going on. That being said, so a big thing about this is that people think, like I said, because of sightings, how legends and myths work. From what I can tell, the surviving pterosaurs, the surviving pterodactyls, are the reason why we have so many flying urban legend cryptids. They're all the same. They're all the same, being described by different tribes of people in different areas. And that is like the Snallygaster. The Snallygaster was described, the Snallygaster is German for quick spirit or quick ghost, fast ghost. It is described in a very odd way. And if you look up Snallygaster images, people painted in a lurid, attention-seeking type of way with tentacles coming out of its mouth and a cyclopean eye, and it's got like a metal beak. But the description is accurate if you put yourself in the shoes of a Dutch immigrant or an Amish person who speaks German in the colonial days of America. This thing has a 20 to 30, maybe even a 40-foot wingspan. It is as tall as a giraffe, an animal you've never seen before because you're German. So it's as tall as a giraffe. It has an 8-foot long beak. And no doubt these things also probably have long tongues that they can help use to grab and fasten prey. So that's where the tentacle comes from, because no doubt, like a giraffe or any of these tall animals, they have like foot-long tongues that can like come out and like grab things. Imagine like 3-foot-long tongue coming in, like wrapping around shit.
I mean, I've even heard people throw the theory of, regardless of what it was, there's a good possibility that during those sightings it may have had like a squid or like an octopus or something like that in its mouth too.
Something in its mouth. I've heard that. But I also like the idea that the prehensile tongue, because to describe the actual beak, like how it would grab prey, I think that's a very fearsome possibility that it would open its beak like a pelican and it would have this tongue come out and be able to like Trimmers style that shit. Where, like it would come out like a graboid and be like fucking.
Oh, I mean,
like prehensile
even
tongue.
If these things are coming down and ambushing things out of the water, because it seems like there's regular sightings of these things over the water. I mean, that context would completely make sense too, because not only are they going down and grabbing stuff with the beak, but they also have this tongue that they can wrap and grab with. So, I mean, regardless, if you look at it in that context, could be a squid, could be a tongue, could have been a mixture of both, but it makes sense that that would be one of the ways that they would go about seeking prey and be able to grab the prey if they do have that intelligence factor, because you're going to be a lot more precise with a grab and then like wrapping your tongue around something than you would be just trying to dive quickly and grab it real quick, especially out of the water. If it's like bigger prey, they're going to use their feet, but if it's smaller prey, look at any bird, they use their mouth first. Bigger prey, then they'll use their feet.
A lot of people have talked about theories involving pterodactyls, especially these big ones, the Quetzalcoatlus stuff, as being death storks, as being literally like they would fly, but then they would walk around for most of their mobility. Like, so it would fly to an area, let's say like a farm, and say that farm has a bunch of sheep, and then it would land, and then it would just start walking around like a stork and just like picking up fucking sheep, and swallowing them whole, kicking back its head and just swallowing these sheep whole. That would terrify the fuck out of you if you were an Amish person. That would be a goddamn demon. That would be something that you could not comprehend. Nothing in the animal record, nothing in your natural life has ever, in prepared you for this. This is a dragon. And they represented it as accurately as they could in their language. Cryptozoologists need to start studying anthropology and things like that to really understand the naming principles of things, the descriptions, like why people describe things the way they do. It's like the reason why we call sharks like the tiger shark or bull shark and great white. These names are significant, both of their appearance. But if you heard that and never saw a shark, you would have no clue what we're fucking talking about. Like, it's a bull shark because its face is wide and square like the nose of a bull, and you would think maybe it has horns, maybe etc. So like the replication and the drawings of it, the legend of it spirals into the imagination out of control. But it's absolutely describing a real life encounter with these things in the earliest settlers. The snallygaster is very interesting too, because the snallygaster has been used historically it's been understood historically in our modern sense as a legend that was told to slaves to keep them from escaping plantations. I would like to argue that this is not the case, but in fact, it was a legend shared by slaves when they escaped plantations as a warning not to get too deep into the forests and swamps of the countryside, especially around Delaware, New Jersey, etc., because the snallygasters are a real creature and they will eat a person. This is a real thing when you're like, yeah, if you had to say run into the forest, you might want to warn someone that, yeah, there's like these flying things that can literally swallow you whole. Like that becomes a legend that the white man, quote unquote, both will use as well as create the mythos around. But this is part of that natural folk bestiary type thing where the folks, the people, the real people of the land are describing real creatures that they're afraid of. And the white man, for lack of a better word, the authorities are saying that they're legends, they're myths. That's just, like when Native Americans talk about Bigfoot, that's just what the superstitious locals, the savages talk about, the wild man, the Sabe and things like that. But we know, because we're like mature intellectuals, we need to listen to those people with respect because they know what they're talking about. They're not trying just to scare us with boogeyman stories. They're really telling us to be careful in these territories because there's threats out here that regular European based academics, etc., do not accept as real, but they will prove themselves to be real.
If the people that lived off the land to the point where all the settlers couldn't even come and survive here without their help say, yeah, we don't step foot in there or even hunt in that area because there's bad things there, then, maybe you should listen to what they're saying and heed their warning, because if they have figured out how to survive in this land and you can't even do it, and they say, yeah, you're going to die in that area, maybe don't go there.
There's also a lot of the skepticism of the modern world because it refuses to accept the idea that legacy animals like the Ice Age animals, Pleistocene era animals, megafauna era animals, dinosaur era animals survived because they're not able to actually comprehend that and to accept that. They'll try to they'll always misdirect it. It has to be fantasy before it's flesh and blood. Like the Sasquatch, they can't accept the fact that a megafauna Neanderthal type humanoid has survived the Ice Age because the Ice Age is over and clearly all the Ice Age things are dead. Mammoths are dead, but like I said, I still believe mammoths are real actually, but they'll be like, well, mammoths are dead. Well, this is just a woolly person. You have woolly mammoths, you have woolly people. Woolly mammoths are just woolly elephants with a lot of body hair. These Sasquatches are just human beings that are woolly. Whatever that Ice Age adaptation was, big, meaty, and woolly. right? And now they survived. Not everything died. And then it's like, well, it still gets cold enough for them to live in areas. If they need to be cold, they can just go on top of mountains. It's fucking freezing up there all the time, which is what they do. And you start seeing how it explains itself, because you're like, well, if I lived in the Ice Age, I'd want to be cold. Yeah, you want to live on a mountain. You want to live in the north where they live, where they live.
I mean, that would completely make sense with a lot of these pockets, too, because, again, people wanted to say that none of this stuff exists because, it can't still exist. I mean, even any of the water dinosaurs, for lack of a better term, like plesiosaur, any of that stuff. Like, everybody knows, obviously, the entire planet wasn't completely void of life when these events happened. Like, there were things that survived. That's how life ended up continuing on. And what not a better place to be to survive a major cataclysm than underwater, where you're not getting a lot of the contaminants. And a lot of these things stay lower because, assumably, that was the best place to be. And a lot of these sightings of creatures that end up coming out of caverns or caves or all of these like weird spots in mountains from areas that almost seem like they were like closed off for a long time also completely makes sense, because if there is these giant cataclysms going, of course, any animal's natural reaction is going to be to try to go to somewhere safe, somewhere where these things aren't happening. A lot of the time, the closest place they're going to find is these caves and cavern systems. And then what happens? They get blocked into these systems until somebody eventually opens them back up one day, and then they open up a new ecosystem. Like, it makes more sense than it doesn't make sense to assume that some of these things still existed, because, again, just off the simple factor that not everything on the planet died. So you're going to pick and choose what you think may have survived. Like, again, like anything underwater, I feel like is instantly just fair game.
Well, with the pterodactyls, the idea of there are many different varieties of them, right? So it doesn't have to be this one, like, well, of course, Quetzalcoatlus has survived, and we have to always account for this 20 or 40 foot long pterodactyl. There are many different varieties. So, like Jersey Devil, the Jersey Devil could be a locally specific type of pterodactyl that is man-sized, and that's the thing with pterodactyls. With birds, any bird approaching the size of a man, 6 foot wingspan, 4 feet long, is a big bird. That's a massive bird. That's a condor. That's an eagle, right? Like the harpy eagle is the largest eagle, and it's only like 7 foot wingspan and maybe like 3 feet tall, right? But it's enormous. Its massive proportions are enormous, right? Pterodactyls routinely were bigger than men, although pterodactyls could also be very small. The smallest pterodactyl, in fact, was only 25 centimeter wingspan. It was only 5 centimeters long. That's the size of a bat. So we're talking tiny. We're talking like a little bitty bat-sized creature. And, like the largest was, the size of a small airplane. And so anything in between that is a possible size for any variety that we could, potentially come across. They can either be gigantic Thunderbird-sized creatures, or they could literally be the size of bats and just not be understood properly to be what they really are. And so, like the concept of this is that we don't know exactly how many surviving species there are. We know it's not limited to just one. There are a lot of compelling pieces of evidence, like Jersey Devil, for example, is a great case. The Jersey Pine Barrens are both home to Thunderbird sightings and this specific Jersey Devil variety, which is like a 10 foot long or a 10 foot wingspan, but only human size, 5 foot, 6 foot long body. It's represented as always having the face of a horse, which could easily be a broader, like two maw of a pterodactyl.
I was going to say, without context, the closest thing that you would assume would be some type of a horse head. Yeah, because it has the elongated face.
It's got the horn in the back as a counterweight, so it's a goat because it's got the goat horns. It's covered in a black feather fur because it's a nocturnal creature. It's only really seen at night. You made a reference earlier with the Van Meter Visitor having this like shockwave and this bioluminescence. So, one, if these things were existing in cave systems, it's definitely possible that these things may have adapted to be able to see and do things in the dark. But even on the other flip side of that, just off of the fact that they might potentially have these sonar type abilities, that's usually something that you see in things that tend to be predatory more towards the nighttime. So, Exactly. The main reason why a lot of people may not have sightings of a lot of different species of these things might be because they're strictly nocturnal. And they come out of these caves at night when nobody's really looking up or able to really see much in the sky anyways. The nocturnal aspect of it is an absolutely necessity to be able to think about and be like, in fact, not only that they're nocturnal through evolution, like bats are nocturnal through evolution, but most animals are actually going nocturnal like intelligently, like by choice, like purposely, to avoid humans, to avoid people. This has already been proven scientifically, and actual in New Jersey, to be honest. I think if I'm remembering it correctly, and I think I am, it's on the East Coast. They were doing these studies with animals in parks, and they found out that deer and bears and other animals that normally were diurnal, which means moving during the day, had switched to a nocturnal existence, specifically to avoid human hunters. Remember, it's illegal to hunt at night. Another aspect of how human laws and human society, direct and decide natural, behavior, natural behavior. Sorry, getting scrambled right now. Someone's hitting me with some kind of direct energy weapon, scrambling my shit. No, I really did have kind of confusion right there on how to actually say this, but yeah, like they were proving that it's a conscious, intelligent choice amongst species to choose either nocturnal or diurnal behavior. They can do both. Like bears can do both, but bears in people and areas populated with people choose nocturnal existences, and bears without people choose diurnal daytime existences, like in Alaska and Canada, and the polar bears, for example, they choose diurnal existences during the day. Pterodactyls, no doubt, can do this, and like I said, with their intelligence, have the ability to decide this as well. And it has to be seen that like Bigfoot has that ability to do it so well as well. Bigfoot's mostly active at night. And it's been theorized that Neanderthals had night vision and were these hunters that operated nocturnally. But I think it's a conscious decision because it just knows that most people go inside at night. Most people are not active at night, and people have terrible night vision. And thus the fear factor increases because we only ever see these creatures like the Jersey Devil at night, and it's like nocturnal visitation. There are so many reports of the Jersey Devil like landing on people's roofs and things at night, and that's like the intersection of human domesticity, like it's on your house, and the behavior of a nocturnal flapping, basically a gigantic bat, and it's just flying around, and eventually it might land on your shit, and you go outside and you're like, oh fuck, what is that? And it just kind of flies off. Same thing with Mothman. Same thing with a lot of these East Coast creatures that are these beings with wings that are seen at night, that are seen typically in places where people are exploring or on people's properties, on the road. Mothman, very famously seen on the road as it flew by that person's car. And it's a migrating creature. It's a migrating species. So it's seen in areas. There's a spree of sightings, and then it moves on. And it does this either once a year or whatever pattern of movement it does. No doubt, obviously, it doesn't want to be disturbed. It doesn't want to cause the commotion and have people hunting it. So it's always like this cat and mouse game of it finding places where people aren't.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
In the South, in Texas, we had the big bird sightings, the big bird of Laredo and the big bird of Refugio and stuff. And there were these spring sightings of gigantically proportioned birds that were considered fearsome and maybe even had teeth. And that's what people are like, birds don't have teeth. It seems to be a mishmash, a superstitious sighting, right, of like local people. But this was in the 1970s. People had dinosaur movies. People had shit like that. I think the reason why no one saw it as a pterosaur back then is because people didn't know pterosaurs had feathers. And like I said, the 2022 study proves that pterosaurs had feathers. And I think as we get more educated as a people, that kind of case where we see something, we don't know what it is, we create a monster sighting out of it, is becoming almost exclusively irrelevant because the education is like, the education is so universal that we all know what pterodactyls are now. We all know what pterosaurs are now, just by identifying like immediately. So we don't have any Snallygaster sightings anymore. We don't have any Jersey Devil sightings anymore. We don't have any monster bird sightings anymore. What we have is pterodactyl sightings, ever increasing and more consistent pterodactyl sightings, living dinosaur sightings, pterodon sightings. And I think really like when it comes to Thunderbird is like the last one, but I think Thunderbird is Quetzalcoatlus. It is just a feathered variety of this. And people really kind of like will debate back and forth if this is an actual physical bird or not. But I think it's, when you're actually going to break it down, the surviving populations of Quetzalcoatlus that have inspired not only Native American stories, but continue to inspire the sightings that are seen today. Alaska has plenty of sightings of birds that are 40 feet across. And I don't think any terrestrial bird species can get that big. I don't think any of them ever could. But what could was Quetzalcoatlus. What could were these archozoids, these pterodons, and their populations no doubt survive up there. It's just a matter of us thinking that dinosaurs don't survive in the cold. Not the case, because dinosaurs could survive in the snow. Their feathers could evolve as the climate changes to keep up with it constantly. But also that people don't understand the geography of these areas. Northern Canada has thousands and thousands of lakes that don't even have names. The Great Canadian Shield is some of the oldest geology. The Appalachian Mountains, for example, are some of this oldest geology. Like the Appalachian Mountains are older than Saturn. It's the rings of Saturn specifically. Like that means something. Like these areas have remained basically unchanged since then. Oh, also, just kind of like in a small aside of trivia, the continental North America used to be divided by an ocean called the Western Interior Seaway. And there were two islands where present-day Canada and America exist. On Alaska, all the way down to Mexico, there was, I have it right here on the notes. I was trying to remember, I never really do. Let's see. Laramida. Laramida was the west coast. And on the east, Appalachia. That's how old Appalachia is. Appalachia, the name of it, still refers to the island that has been unchanged since literally Pangea. Like the Appalachian Mountains are the land time forgot. You talk about that book, The Land Time Forgot, Valley of the Dinosaurs type shit, Jurassic World, Lost World. Appalachia is the lost world. That absolutely is like the oldest environment possible. It's older than the Amazon jungle.
Which explains why every single time they start doing some new mining or something like that, they end up uncovering some kind of weird, even in just outside of cryptozoology, but just weird undiscovered species of fish, of lizards, of just weird little things. You know what I mean? Like every single time they end up opening up a new cavern, they find something new in there. Like, I mean, you got the Mammoth Cave system underneath in that area that, people still haven't even fully discovered the ends of it, where everything goes. Like, who knows what could potentially exist down there? I mean, even as far as just giant pocket ecosystems of things. And you break into the right one day, and you might realize that there's a giant ecosystem that's been existing since, the dawn of, quote, dinosaur time, where there's a fully inhabitable environment that's just coexisting down there, for all we know,
Well, the thing is, like, I don't think that it's necessarily a case of, and not that I'm saying it wrong, I do believe that's the case, and it really is the case, proven that every time we crack into these things, they haven't been uncovered in millions and millions of years. But I think it's not a case of so much surviving pockets that haven't been contacted. I believe it's a synergetic co-evolution, which is like, if we're using the examples of dinosaurs, we're looking into the past and we're not seeing the present. We have to think about how they would have evolved with us, to have evolved with everything. If they are from these dinosaur days, and they evolved through the ice ages, they survived every cataclysm that we did to get here to this present day. And yes, including an evolution of intelligence, evolution of consciousness, evolution of physical abilities. Like I said, the bioluminescence. And there are already creatures that are hundreds of millions of years old. Imagine just, they might have societies. They might have, and I always go there, and I always kind of want to like hit the brakes before I go too crazy. But like the Bigfoots, I always believe like Sasquatch has cities. There have to be Sasquatch communities and societies that are far more elaborate than we ever give them the credit for. just simply because that's how social creatures like ants and termites are extremely social. Bees are very advanced and stuff, and these are insects. They don't even have brains, really.
Dude, they've started discovering octopuses that set up neighborhoods under the ocean. Like they'll start building like these little like rock dome houses, and they'll live in like communities on these like little rock dome houses on the bottom of the ocean. Like it's weird. As we're actually starting to pay attention to nature, we're starting to realize that there's a lot of these species that literally mirror what we do as a society, but on a little bit more of a simplified level.
Elephants worship the moon.
Dude, they have graveyards.
Dead.
They have, family graveyards. They don't even just bury their dead, but they have specific ancestral graveyards. Yeah. They'll only bury their dead in specific places. Like, that is crazy to think about.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, we got to think about, sure, give them the primitive dinosaur roaring, biting, they just want to fight and fuck all the time. But 65 million years of evolution, that had to have affected them in terms of being able to navigate the modern world. Stealth, like I said, they're not out of time. Like the idea that dinosaurs are roaming around bumping into stuff because they don't know what anything is. These are creatures that evolved with Native Americans. They know mankind is deadly. They know mankind can hunt them. They know mankind can hurt them. They don't want anything to do with us. They can see our artificial light for miles, maybe. They're very sensitive to things like noise pollution. They're very sensitive to things like fossil fuel pollution and things like that. The dangerous chemicals around cities and atmospheres. They have to be understood as being like dolphins or whales in more of a sense than just big lizards that fly around. They're not crocodiles, they're not alligators. There would have to be something along the lines of a dolphin or a whale.
Dude, even whales, I was going to say, even whales, they're starting to realize, we've always known that they have a language, but now we're really starting to actually discover the complexity of their language. And people are saying now that they think that they have like a full language, means of communication, like being able to tell each other like ancestral history, like all that stuff. And they're starting to say that if we can discover the language of the whales, like we might start uncovering like ancient history at that point. Like we always mirror things with what we perceive intelligence from the human perspective of intelligence, not considering the fact that, I've said this a million times on the show, if you're something that's living out in nature, you have no means for anything that humans would consider intelligence. But in a broader sense, you're way more intelligent than any human because you have the ability to survive out there, which humans would not. So how are we even judging this intelligence factor to begin with? Like, at a certain point, it's almost like... the ability of complexity of communication. Like maybe that's how we should kind of start trying to gear things, because I feel like the complexity of communication is probably a good way to be able to tell how intelligent something is. It's not by what they know, it's by their ability to communicate complex ideas. That's probably what would probably be the best judge of intelligence.
And it's not even that mankind can test this intelligence. It's just the abilities that they have surpass mankind's even imagination. Like, could you imagine that, say, ground squirrels in the Arctic could hibernate for 7 to 8 months without eating, drinking, or expelling waste, and go into the stasis like tardigrades? The concept of like a tardigrade, like a water bear, and their survivability, or extremophiles and things like that. Like the idea of them going into caves. These creatures might very well have hibernation cycles. They might, because they're so large, they can do the migration patterns as well as be able to go to sleep in stasis for months, if not years at a time. They could, like I said, have extremely strong territories or be globe-trotting and be able to fly from the Pacific Ocean to Canada in their lifetimes, et cetera, and back and forth. And so the idea of, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The proving they even exist, I think the amount of sightings is so prevalent. But I also believe that there's been evidence. Very famously, the Civil War pterosaur photo, which I'll just flip it over like that. If you guys can see it, you see that? Yeah, I think everyone's seen the Civil War. Pterodon photo. They've seen mankind. They've been here since we got here. They know how violent we are. They know we have guns. They know we will shoot them. We will kill them. I think that a basic sign of intelligence, or requisite for sign of intelligence, is avoiding mankind, is hiding from mankind, is knowing that we're a dangerous creature, is knowing that we're more trouble than we're worth, and that they don't owe us anything. That is important. But remember, it's not the first time we've ever seen each other. The Civil War photo is real. We have been killing them. We have been, absolutely committing homicide against them, like killing them, like hunting them. I don't know how it gets covered up. I don't know what authorities are responsible for the Smithsonian Institute, maybe. But yeah, mankind is like the killing Sasquatch is killing them, is actively reducing their numbers, is actively hunting them down. Like I said, I know in the context of the Civil War photo, they were fighting the Civil War and they saw this pterodon and they shot it, killing it, taking advantage of the opportunity to it. But, I think after all this time, I think the sign of its intelligence is that this creature can still hide from us, and still knows to hide from us.
I mean, that's like an instant sign of intelligence, is just to know to hide from humans in general. Because, I mean, that's probably the smartest thing that any semi-intelligent species can do. And, I mean, even in, like, the simplest terms, deers have developed being smart enough to know areas where you can't hunt. And they will literally sit on the line over the area where you can't hunt. So if deers, who clearly work on a lot more of a simplistic factor than a lot of these things, have learned things like that, just knowing what area to stand in where nobody's going to take a shot at them and they can just do whatever they want, then you can't tell me that these more intelligent animals with more of an ability to break down things and have more problem-solving abilities haven't had the ability to be like, all right, this is where I should not go and this is where I should go.
Or like know what an airport is and know to avoid the airport. Exactly, because that's where the planes are coming down, the noise and the but
even on the other flip side of that, I mean, how many sightings have there been over the O'Hare Airport of like flying humanoids, for example? I know we're talking about something totally different, but flying humanoids over O'Hare is like a constant thing.
And even then, like I would say, like you could argue that that's just some kind of like maybe evolved pterodon that looks more human-like with stronger legs, less, maybe less emphasis on, like you said, there's a lot of that we don't know that true experts would know. One of the theories is that pterodactyls didn't fly; they walked and ran, but they had the ability to fly that they had in reserve, in case they wanted to use it, which is like a strange theory, but like. If that's the case, then a more humanoid-looking pterodactyl over 65 million years is not impossible. Where it could just be like that Spider-Man villain, where it's like, he's like pterodactyl on top and a man on the bottom kind of thing with like human legs. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying like it's a theory that could be bannered about for these Mothman type sightings, these gargoyle type sightings, surviving evolved man-like, reptilian humanoids, but at the same time, I think that it's like the sightings that do occur, they fall under the golden rule of less people, more nature. You're not going to see them fly over tourist attractions. You're not going to see them fly over, like I said, major sporting events, etc. But they have been reported all around the world. They have been reported in Italy. They've been reported in Hawaii. They've been reported in Papua New Guinea. They've been reported in Australia. They've been reported in, it's at Washington, D.C. They have been seen flying over the Potomac River. I believe it's a matter of them being rarer than they are more common. Maybe they are a rare creature. Maybe they, it's just a matter of them being a less common species. But I don't think those sightings are ever going to stop. But I think that they will slow down as these creatures and mankind go two separate ways. Mankind is going more internal, confined by our own boxes, not only of thought, but of experience. This phone that I'm holding, for example, for millions of Americans, this is all of their window to the world. If they're not looking at the phone, then their eyes are closed, type thing. And as the future generations go forward, we're going to have less and less people literally just looking up, literally just looking at the sky, literally looking at, the horizon, etc. But we will get more videos of these things, I hope. But I think their golden era of videos, it kind of came and went already. I believe that there's a lot of backdoor software in these phones that we have, these video cameras that we have now in our phones, that it doesn't allow for good videography for aerial phenomenon. You can't capture a UFO. You can't even film the moon with these cameras. They suck at capturing anything in the sky.
Not to mention photos just disappearing in general. Like, I've had endless numbers of people that have like, oh, dude, I got this really good footage on my phone. And I know a lot of people can always be like, oh, the footage is always missing, which, of course, you always have to take things with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that this is a definite answer for sure, but just knowing that everything's connected through a cloud, it's all connected through the internet. If you have photos of anything solid, like, it doesn't seem like it's out of the question for me for the photos to just completely disappear. And not to mention how many cases I've heard of people mentioning this, but like I said, you can take it with a grain of salt, but there's got to be something to it. For every 100 accounts I get like that, there's got to at least be one that's 100% factual,
No, I believe it. And I do know they make cameras act weird. Phenomenology like this makes fucking things go weird. There was a UFO sighting that I saw with my family on New Year's Day of 2020. And I remember distinctly videoing this thing with my phone, and then they had their phone working at the same time. And between the sighting starting and stopping, somehow the video didn't record. I have no idea how this was possible. And, going back on it, I was like, I swear I hit the button. I swear I saw the recording, the time being kept and everything. But the video never saved. It did not. So things like that happen. We're not trained crisis cameramen. We can all have phones in our pockets, but when the moment comes to actually get them out and to record, etc., like that is, that's more of just like, hey, you got lucky kind of thing. Like you were able to all get it all set up in time before it actually even looks good. But that even said, there are several really good pterodactyl videos. There are. One is from China, a military video, or a video that came from the Chinese military. And they are reportedly just doing some cartography work in a national park, and they capture a pterodactyl flying around. And it's very, very good video of a surviving pterodactyl in the national parks and jungles of China and the mountains of China. An area that's known for its dragon mythology, right? Like, so we go back to these ideas, like where they are seen, their mythology always surrounds the area. Another great video came out of Idaho or Iowa. And I was a state with an I in, I believe it was Idaho, in which this pterodactyl is seen flying, and then it dips its head down, kind of does this weird stall in air, and then kind of goes back to flying. Now, obviously, people want to debunk videos. People think that this is the game, or you see a video and you're like, how is this faked? How did they fake it? It's all a magic trick. I got to figure out how they did the trick. Even if it was an RC plane, even if it was a remote controlled drone plane or whatever, it goes against aerodynamic rationality that this is even possible. Like the pterodactyl's in flight, it dips its head down, balances itself, and then corrects itself and keeps going. Only a living thing could do that. Only a living thing that's evolved to do that specific weird behavior. And no one faking it would include that weird behavior because it's so unwieldy and awkward. You would just have a pterodactyl flying across the sky. You wouldn't fake this weird head dip it does, but that head dip makes all the difference. It is an unexplainably biological behavior.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. Now back to the show. See, that's one of those things that you get into it, and it's just like adding that extra detail ends up making no sense whatsoever. Like, you get into these certain ideas with these accounts where, people want to throw them off and say that they're false, but then they get into these like little details, and it's like, if anybody was trying to convince somebody, they wouldn't have added this little detail because it makes it sound more ridiculous. But if you actually get the context of it, you realize that that little detail that sounded like it was the piece that was going to make it crazy actually brings more validity to it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like most people's real life experiences, when they're telling you what they saw, they're not trying to entertain you. They're just telling you what they saw. So the idea of it not fitting narrative structure or making common sense or making sense at all, that's highly realistic, especially if it's just fleeting encounters where, say, a guy is filming in his backyard, a creature fly over, it literally looks down at him. It seemingly looks down at him or in his general direction, from its side eye kind of thing, which, like I said, is the behavior described and corroborated in other sightings, specifically of a surfer in Oregon who saw these beings. I think it was the year 1985. And one of them looked down and looked at him with one eye. And that's the distinct memory of this guy in his sighting, is that he made eye contact with it and it looked at him. So once again, we have a pterodactyl flying to the sky, making eye contact basically with the people watching it, like knowing it's being watched and watching back. Simple details like that really make the difference. I would say like that's kind of the crux of it, is that, and that's really the kind of like the whole of it, the argument I was going to make. I don't think it has to be very lurid. Like I said, I don't think that it's like, oh no, watch yourself if you're driving through the Mojave Desert at night, because you never know if a pterodactyl stalking you or anything. And I don't think there really is any attacks besides maybe on children and the young and the very old in nature. Like they always have something to worry about. They always have to be fearful in the woods or in the wilderness, because children and the elderly are nature's victims. That's just a reality. Cougars, mountain lions, big dogs, dingoes, big snakes, big owls, big hoot, big birds, pterodactyls, dinosaurs. It doesn't matter. If you're a child in the woods or a child in the wilderness, you can be eaten. And no doubt, it would help explain a lot of missing 411 cases if a pterodactyl was involved. Because a lot of these cases, like I said, I don't want to say like, oh no, watch out, they're going to kill you and eat you. This is why we need to worry about it. But this is like the last thing I want to talk about, like the missing 411 connection, is that a lot of these cases, especially around the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains and everything, they have children or cases of children going missing, being found miles away in higher elevations, and then being found in pieces or being found in such minutia, like little bits of bone or teeth or like a shoe or something. And that's like all that's found. Nothing can explain that. I have tried. I have really racked my mind about it. Sasquatch is a kind of an explanation for it, but even then, that would be a very, very difficult thing for Sasquatch to do. And I know you have probably thought about it this way. You've seen the David Paulides documentaries, Missing 411, etc. That's a head scratcher. Unless something was able to physically fly with it and with you or with the person and then devour them, which would be the pterodactyl modus operandi there. That's where it'd fit. And the only way to do that is if you're bigger than the person, like by a large scale. You're larger by a factor of maybe 2. You're twice as big as the person you're kidnapping. Which makes sense if you're a child. Like if you steal a baby, yeah, anything's bigger than a baby. But if it's an old person, like an old man, then that you're dealing with something that still is 6 feet tall, 10 feet tall, with a wingspan to match, be able to power, the force this dead weight. Have you ever tried to pick up an old person? I know they're lighter than normal, but it's dead weight to fly with that. You would need to be massively powerful. And the only suspect for that is a pterodactyl.
I mean, what was it in Illinois back in was it the 80s or whatever? There was that was it 8 or 9 year old that got picked up by a quote Thunderbird. So I mean, if you're already looking at that, I mean, why couldn't you look at that on a broader scale to think that it fits in with some of these other contexts of things? I mean, we already have a semi-recent reported sighting of a bird picking up a kid that was already a fairly decent size. But again, he referred to that thing as only being maybe around like a 10-foot wingspan, so a juvenile possibly. So think about the possibility of what something that's full size would be able to do. If he was reporting a 10-foot wingspan, but we're talking about something that's significantly bigger than that. I mean, you could almost take that kid's size and then times it by 4 and assume that that would probably be about what it could carry.
Yeah, and no doubt we're talking about creatures that are far large. If you have never seen the actual skeleton of a Quetzalcoatlus, it's hard to imagine that such a creature could even fly. They are fucking massive. They're bigger than T-Rexes. They're bigger than T-Rexes. They're taller. They're not as heavy. They had hollow bones. But we're talking, no joke, a 6 to 8 foot beak. We're talking no joke. Like you can just look it up online, the recreations they have over them. Something even half that size could eat a full-grown man. If given time, eat a full-grown man. Like, let alone a kid. Swallow a kid whole is what we're talking at that point. Swallowing like a 8-year-old child whole. Like, we're not even talking babies or infants. We're talking like this is something. And when you actually see it, you're like, yeah, that's possible. This is absolutely possible. Like these pterodactyls were very large creatures, very large, like larger than giraffes. And they can fly.
Well, I mean, if you're already looking at the context of these things gulping down sheep like we were kind of talking about earlier, I mean, that's already bigger than a kid. So, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like it. Again, I don't have to say that the biggest ones always have to do this work and everything, because obviously it goes unseen, like something, but there is a lot to theorize, because these creatures were massive. Like, there are dozens of varieties that were easily capable of eating a child or eating an older person. Any one of them would be able to do it. And the skepticism, the skeptic would obviously be like, if something took these people and flew away with them, then they would be witnessed. Eyewitnesses would see it. The context of Missing 411 needs to be understood. Natural philosophy needs to be understood. The rainstorms that are always present in a lot of these mysterious disappearances. No one can explain why the rains come, why they happen, how they're connected. If you bridge the gap between missing person, rainstorms, and giant flying creatures, you would say, oh, is a thunderbird responsible? Thunderbirds theorize to use the storm fronts to fly, theorize to use the big currents and the clouds and the heavier pressure of these rainstorms to help stay aloft. Yes, they fly with the storms. These creatures fly kind of like in the forefront, pushed along in their migratory patterns with these storms. So the environments that they're always active in are rainy, gray, tumultuous, storm-like conditions. It would be almost impossible to really see even a flock of these things. And they would blend in even on like radar and things like that with the greater biological masses present. People don't know this, but in storms, there are massive amounts of birds. There are massive amounts of insects. They get caught up in the currents and they get caught up in the swells. It's already been theorized. There's already existing theories that thunderbirds use this to help feed themselves, because the people, like, there are just big swarms and clouds of like insects that get caught up. And they're so thick that they're visible on Doppler radar. Like, that's how concentrated the biomass is. It affects radar.
Saying these things are essentially just doing what whales do, in the ocean when they get schools of fish. They're just flying through it and just sucking up everything they can. And these things are assumably big enough and powerful enough to not get swooped up in this stuff. So assumably it just has free range and it's just taking advantage of a free food source.
Well, as the rain comes, as so like thunderbirds are already associated with this kind of phenomenon, with this kind of behavior. They fly with the rain. They're always seen around storms. They're usually seen in the flashes of lightning. Many of the missing 411 disappearances are right before storms. Storms so severe as to stop and prevent the actual search of the person. That's how close the disappearance to the rain is. Like the person disappears and then that night it starts raining. This is seen like in a dozen different cases of missing 411, right? And it's not because the pterodactyl is causing the rain. It's not because there's some kind of magical association. It's not because like the Fey realm is opening up and the creature's using the thunderstorm to cover its tracks. It's because all of it's a perfect storm. It's a convergence of all these different phenomena. The person who is in the wilderness, the storm front that's carrying the pterodactyls, basically, the pterodactyls that are using the storm front, they're already in hunting mode because they're using the storm front to help, basically continue their migration to make it easier for them to move. And they see this person on the ground, this child, they see an elderly person. They're opportunistic feeders. They're going to take them. They might work socially where, they work like killer whales, taking seals. And in that case, you're fucked. Like you're not going to get away from it. And if you're an isolated case, they're powerful enough just to swoop and take you, and they're not going to fight back. It's probably going to instantaneously kill you. And then when it eats you, it's going to swallow you whole. Like there's not like a scream, like you're not hanging from its talons screaming like Raquel Welch in the caveman movies. It's a natural predator, and I don't even know what its natural predation methods would be, but it'd probably be very fast. Like you would probably not even see it coming.
I'm assuming that it's prey ability. It would probably be something along the lines of like a hawk. I feel like it would probably make the swoop fast impact coming down, possibly even using its feet depending on how big the predator is, and then just taking it off from there. So I'm assuming that even if it just works off of that, I mean, hawks swoop down and knock out their food. So when they're flying off, it's not wiggling around. It's not trying to move to get away from them. So assumably it might even be the same with these things. They might come down with a massive impact, boom, knock out their prey, and then carry it off past that. And if you're thinking about something where you're saying, all right, how is it able to lift up people at this rate? The one kid ends up getting dropped. If the prey is knocked out, it's not wiggling, it's not moving. It makes it significantly easier to carry this stuff.
And the power of these prey birds, the birds of prey. There are videos, for example, of ospreys that fly down, bald eagles too, like they fly down to the water, dive into the water, grab a fish with their claws, then start beating their wings against the surface of the water and propel themselves out of the water into the sky with their catch, which weighs, a fair amount of their own body weight. The power behind that alone, remember, their feathers are wet. The bird has completely been submerged in water, yet still able to do that. Imagine on dry land. There is no, the human mind physically cannot keep up with, like the human body physically it does not match for the power of these fucking creatures, the stamina of these creatures, like the sheer enormity of their force. Like you said, when it hits you, because the animal itself weighs hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds, because they're big. When it hits you, it's going to smash you flat. And then when it takes you away, like I said, it's in the claws of these creatures, like owls, eagles, birds of prey. Incredibly powerful. It's not just being squeezed hard. You're being pierced. You're being absolutely crushed in these creatures' talons. And then to factor in that its victims are children or the elderly who don't have a lot of fight in them. Let's just be honest. Like, it's not like beyond imagination that the victim age range that these people usually fall under, being small children, the teenagers, or the very elderly, are, mentally disabled people, which seems to be prevalent in a lot of these people, a lot of these victims. Like they won't even probably get a chance to scream. To be honest, you wouldn't even get a chance to yell out. It would just be near instantaneous death from above. And by the time you're eaten, yeah, you're already been dead for a while. That I'd say safely that's the case for a lot of this. Like an owl or like a hawk, like you said, like an owl or a hawk, it would be the swoop, the crush, and then when they take you up, you're already dead. Like you're already gone at that point.
So seeing the speed of like hawks, for example, they say it's like almost like getting hit by a bullet. So again, imagine this thing. It's almost like getting just crushed by like a truck instantaneously, you know?
Also, if we use hawks or owls as the paradigm, they are so agile that regardless of how actual big they are very agile creatures, able to fly through trees, able to fly through, I think people have demonstrated like very narrow gaps. You are not safe if you're in a tree line. You're not safe if you're underneath trees. You're not safe if you think you are, because they said it's not like they need you to be in the wide open. They don't need you to be in a field of grass. They can literally, like the way birds of prey work, they catch mice that are buried in the snow. They catch squirrels that are on the sides of trees. You know, like their senses, like that's what I think gets people the most, is that you might theoretically be walking on a trail. You might be the last person on that line, right? Like the missing 411 cases. And as you're slowing down, it comes and gets you. And it's not flying directly up. It's flying side to side. It's flying like through the trees. Gets you, flies through the trees, takes you. Your friends don't even hear it. You didn't even let out a scream. And then they get to their destination. They turn around. They go, "Hey, where's the last guy on our line? I thought, did you see him? Did he stop? Oh shit, let's go back and get him." And they go back. And then what they find is maybe a shoe and some pocket change. And they're like, "What happened to this guy? We were at work. We were all walking down this trail together and everything. And he's gone." And we found a boot. We found some pocket change, like he was picked up upside down. The boot comes from when it hit you, you were knocked out of your shoes. And yeah, when you were picked up and carried up, your pocket change fell from your limp body. And that's an actual detail from a certain case in Missing 411 of a guy who was working, I believe, with surveyors out in, basically, it wasn't even a full remote countryside. It was just like a field off the highway where power lines are. And he was like the last person walking with his group. And then they turned around, he's gone, and they find a boot and some pocket change on the ground. Like literally, if something just picked him up upside down and carried him off. The only real possible suspect is something that could fly, something that was fast, something that was quiet, something that was smart. You know, something that was powerful enough to grab a person and just take them. Literally take them in the sky. And I don't believe UFOs did this. I don't believe aliens did it. So what else flies and can do that? It has to be pterodactyls. It has to be.
Hold on tight, guys. This is our last break, so stay tuned. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in. Well, man, I appreciate the fact that whenever you come on the show, you end up connecting in something that always sounds like it's going to be something that, you know, most people aren't going to get behind. But as soon as you start going into it, you end up laying down all this stuff that completely makes more sense than what people ever expected. Like the last time you came on, you're talking about the connection with giant snakes. And it seems like this is almost something that kind of reflects almost the same way that could potentially be possible, which what I was trying to get to as a well-rounded point, man. I really enjoy the way that you do your research because you come at stuff from a different perspective than a lot of people would, because I have not heard anybody else make the relations with pterodactyls, bringing them into a real-world context for a lot of people that may not put any validity or stock behind it, and then connecting it back into some of these missing 411 cases, man. Like, it's been a journey, and I appreciate how you do your research, man, and some of the conclusions that you come to, because you're one of the only people that I've heard even suggest or even throw this potential theory.
Well, see, that's the thing with the cryptozoology. I think it has a lot of benefit to it. I think it, like, I always people study anthropology because the way myths, the way legends, the way urban legends, things like that are formed Like there's always a seed of truth. There's always that kernel of truth. There's something going on. There's a phenomenon going on, but there's a lot of mythologizing. There's a lot of fanciful fiction that gets thrown into the mix. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of wondering. And like if you look at David Paulides missing 411, there is a phenomenon. Something's going on. And there are probably 100 different experts in 100 different fields that all can accurately explain one or two cases, just like I did, with what we're interested in and what our specialties are and what we're knowledgeable about. But it's not a full explanation for the whole thing. But I'm just saying that, yeah, if you start looking at some of them through the lens of possible pterodactyl predation, it clicks. It freaking clicks. And it's like, yeah, Sasquatch took some people. I get that. I get that there are some people who go missing because they don't want to be found. Time slips, portals, whatever. Fairy is, I've heard that explanation, secret government experiments, serial killers, feral people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying that those aren't possible explanations. I'm just saying that through this research and everything, like what I like to do is read about these subjects and then go back to looking at these cases and stuff like that with new eyes, new information, and seeing if anything starts coming into kind of a sharper focus. And like I said, I'm not saying pterodactyls 100% are going to kill and eat you, but I'm saying that no doubt in history, if we both exist at the same time, there have been situations of man versus pterodactyl. And if given the facts, even if man had a gun, pterodactyls win in that fight most times. But, like I said, I don't consider themselves a threat. I don't think they're dangerous, but I don't think they're man eaters like the way sharks are. But I do think that they're potentially very, very dangerous. Potentially your worst nightmare.
Just off the simple fact of just doing what they naturally do, man, and us just being that perfect food source because we're the perfect size to sustain them. But
like they have to be respected if they're real. Like I said, if they're real, they would definitely be apex predator of the skies. They would definitely be the apex predator of whatever environment and biome they fit in. And no doubt, because I do believe they are real, they are currently the apex predator of the skies. They literally are the largest and most dominant force to ever fly. Larger than any bird, larger than up until mankind, literally largest thing to ever take flight. Like that, it's only through our most recent, like last 100 years, 110, 120 years, have we mastered flight and we're able to build planes and stuff to challenge their size. Like it's an impressive creature. Like absolutely deserving of all the respect anyone could ever muster. Like when actually studying pterodactyls, they are fascinating creatures. Like paleontology, what we admit that we know about them, fucking fascinating creatures. Absolutely. Some of the most interesting things to read about.
Well, man, if anybody wanted to possibly... Actually, let me double back first. I always like to end the show with some words of wisdom before we get to the links and everything so that people can come and find all of your awesome research. But if you were going to bestow any words of wisdom on the listeners today, man, what might it be?
Oh, just knowledge is power. That's it. Just the more you know, the more power you really have. More power to you.
Ain't that the truth, man? And if anybody wanted to acquire more of this knowledge, check out some of the awesome research that you do. Dive into all of the obscure things that you end up finding. Where can everybody come and find your shows? Where can everybody come and find your pages? Hopefully not getting deleted again at some point, but hopefully these will be your pages that last for a little while. But if anybody want to come and find them, where can they find you at, man?
The work right now for cryptozoology, if you want to listen to more of this, is Advanced Cryptozoology Exploration Society. Acronym is ACES, ACES, but the Spotify show is under Advanced Cryptozoology Exploration Society. I have, I believe, 60 episodes up there right now, covering various specific subjects. I plan to keep making these shows into the future, well into it. I definitely love this, field of study and discipline. You more of the same. Every episode has that same approach where I respect the subject and I try to tie it all together with real, scientific and academic facts and the eyewitness accounts, and bridge those two divides between, cryptozoology as the study of the people and the legend and the folklore about everything, as well as the paleontological fossil records and biological sciences and evolutionary models, etc. And all of that can be found in the Advanced Cryptozoology Exploration Society, Spotify. I'm hoping to branch it out and get more platforms to distribute it, like Amazon Music, Podbay, and things like that. But for right now, it's free and on Spotify. Every episode's free. It's on Spotify.
Well, man, as usual, I appreciate you making the time to come on, sharing all of your fascinating research. And of course, for all the listeners, I will include your links down in the show description so that they can come and find them, at least for now, until you get your pages removed again. But as usual, man, like I said, I appreciate you making the time to come on. It's always a fun conversation, always fascinating what we get into, and I'm always looking forward to next time, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
If anyone would like to contact me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok are the ones that I'm the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which is available up at the top of the link tree. And the last way you guys can get a hold of me is by calling or texting the Bizarre Reality Media hotline 24/7, and that number is 313-364-1551. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to